Now, all this, of course, is by waking people up and asking them what they were dreaming about, which from a standpoint of a AI guy or a machine learning guy or a neuroscientist, kind of like, but it's the best we've got. Dreams are basically a time in which the ordinary sequence of life events is converted into heuristics, shorthand symbols. And the brain loves symbols in the daytime too, right? We don't walk around parsing every angle of every object. The way the visual system works is that the recognition of your face, for instance, there's a brain area that I've seen you many, many millions of times, billions of times probably, and I recognize you immediately as Jay Shetty because there literally is a neuron in my brain that's a Jay Shetty neuron. We know this, right, from recording from brains of people that recognize people, right? If I met some of your staff today, lovely people, for the first time, now those neurons exist for them. But that representation of you was built up through basic representation of just the orientations of lines, all right? Just like one would sketch your face and then build in more elaborate representation. The brain represents things in symbols in a very abstract way. So without going down too far of a rabbit hole, if I were to, for instance, say, you know what, Jay, I'm going to play artist today, of which I'm not, and I'm going to draw your face. And I did my best to draw your face and showed it to you. You'd probably say, oh, that's not great, but you'd probably recognize some of the features. Yeah. But for instance, if I decided that I was going to put your eyes in a different location, eliminate your teeth, put a bunch of tattoos on your face, for fun, and show you this, and you'd say, that doesn't look anything like me. And I say, but that's my abstract representation of you. It turns out that the brain represents everything in the external world as a shorthand abstract representation. And in dreams, the reason that we tend to, for instance, replace people with animals or objects with different objects is because the brain is thinking more in terms of the relationships between objects than it is the objects themselves. And so this is where dream analysis gets a little bit tricky. So the analysts would say, for instance, I had a dream not that long ago where I was being chased by two animals. It was a bear and a wolf, a very salient dream for me. And turns out that bear and that wolf, I realized only later that day. I was walking around, I'd gone for a swim in the ocean, got out of the ocean, and I turned to someone and I said, oh my goodness, I know what that was about. That was about these two children that are now in my life that, and I thought they're chasing me like they need something from me. And it opened up an entire conscious discussion about that. So in my mind, these children were represented as animals, not because children are always represented as animals, but probably because it was the feeling that they were impinging on me and they're lovely children, but nonetheless that they're impinging on me. So the point is not my dream. The point is that dream analysis always has to take into account that the brain operates in symbols where objects are replaceable and there are only relationships between objects. And so if one has a very scary dream about a person or sees a monster, it's really in the early waking state of the day that we are in a position to best understand those relationships. So here's a tool I recommend that's actually supported by sleep science, which is when waking, and in the first 30 minutes or so around waking, you're in this liminal state. Even if you're somebody who wakes up and feels very alert, you're in this liminal state where that symbolism is still quite fluid. I highly recommend that people try and not bring in too much new sensory experience if they want to understand their dream. Stay lying down with your eyes closed. Maybe tell your partner or if someone else you live with, if you live with somebody, that you just need a few moments and just try and move about your day in a way where you're not trying to solve the dream, but you're also not bringing in a lot of new sensory experience, because in that moment, you actually stand a chance of parsing what that relationship is. There is replay of spatial information during sleep. So initially what Matt showed was that as these little rodents navigate through a maze, there are these cells in the hippocampus called place cells that fire when the animal encounters a turn or a corridor. And that exact same sequence is replayed during sleep. And it turns out this is true in London taxi cab drivers. Before phones and GPS were what they are today, the London taxi cab drivers were famous for knowing the routes through the city through these mental maps. And there have been analysis of their place cell firing during sleep and during wakefulness. And so we are essentially taking spatial information about the location of things and replaying it during sleep. However, it's not replayed so that you remember it all. It's replayed so that if there's a reason to remember it, the links to the emotional system, to the components of the limbic system and hypothalamus that are relevant, like you got into a car crash at a particular location, or you lost a bunch of money because you were a cab driver, Uber driver, we'd say nowadays, and you were stuck at one particular avenue all day and frustrated, and you're getting yelled at by your spouse. That information gets encoded so that you never forget that at that particular time of day and that particular time of year, and this thing happened. So context starts getting linked to experience. So there's spatial information that's absolutely replayed during sleep. And we experience this sometimes as dreams. The dreams that happen early in the night when slow wave sleep or non-REM sleep dominates tends to be sleep of very kind of general themes and kind of location. It can feel a little bit eerie and kind of strange. Not so incidentally, the early phase of the night is when growth hormone is released. In the 80s and 90s, there was a drug that was very popular. It's very illegal now, called GHB. You could actually buy it at GNC or a store then. I never took it, but it was a popular party drug, and some famous celebrities died while on GHB. They were also on a bunch of other things, so it's not clear what killed them. But GHB was very big in certain communities because it promoted a massive release of growth hormone and gave people these very hypnotic states. So people go to clubs and they were in these very hypnotic states. It was part of a whole culture. Mm-hmm. That's early night. And those dreams tend to not have a lot of emotional content or load. That phase of dreaming is associated with the occasional jolting yourself out of sleep because it's somewhat lighter sleep. The dreams that occur during REM, during rapid eye movement sleep, and that dominate towards morning are very different. They tend to have very little epinephrine is available in the brain at that time. Epinephrine, again, being this molecule of stress, fear, and excitement. You are paralyzed during these REM dreams. You cannot move. Intense brain activity, high levels of metabolic activity, dreams in which people report a lot of the theory of mind. We were talking about Simon Baron-Cohen. Theory of mind was actually something that he developed for the diagnosis of autism. If you take most kids of age 5, 6, 7, put them in front of a TV screen in a laboratory, and you have them watch a video where a kid is playing with a ball or a doll, and then the kid puts it into a drawer, shuts the drawer, and walks away, and another kid comes in, and you ask the child who's observing this little movie, you say, what does this second child think? And a typical kid would say, they want to play and they don't know where the ball or doll is, or they're upset or they're sad, they want the doll. Autistic children tend to say, the doll's in the drawer. Mm-hmm. The toy's in the drawer. They tend to fixate. They can't get in on the event. They can't get into the mind they don't have a theory of mind. Dreams in REM have a heavy theory of mind component. People are after me, trying to get me. You can assign motive to other people. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid, but it's because there's an expectation. That doesn't tend to happen in slow wave sleep dreams. Now, all this, of course, is by waking people up and asking them what they were dreaming about, which from a standpoint of a AI guy or a machine learning guy or a neuroscientist, kind of like, but it's the best we've got. But brain imaging in waking states while people view a movie, and then brain imaging while people are sleeping, supports the idea that that's basically what's going on. If you like what we're doing here and you like the information that we're sharing, please click subscribe on the YouTube channel. That really helps us. As well, if you want to hit the notifications button